Welcome back, everyone. Well, if you were watching last week, you might remember an interview I did with Teddy Foster and Chuck Vosganian about the Druthers concert event that was happening at Universal Preservation Hall in Saratoga. It was a fundraiser. So we invited Chuck back again to tell us a bit about the event and the success of the event. But more than that, Chuck and I uncovered something that Chuck is doing that we really want you to know about. So first, welcome back.
Thanks.
Great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Let's start, Chuck, with the Druthers event. How'd it go?
It was great. I mean, we had almost 300 people there paid to come in. It's sort of hard for me to tell sometimes because there's bands and there's people doing service work, but there was about 300 paid people coming in. We raised about $10,000 for the restoration, and the bands were all fantastic. The Tamborelli and her Super Trips kicked off the show, and they set it up great. The Paradox Saints picked up the ball and ran with it. We had Girl Blue from Albany, which was they were fantastic. Right. And then the North and South Dakotas, of course, nailed the closing of the show. So it was great. We had a lot of fun. The production was a lot of fun to do. As you know, most times a show is a catastrophe followed by a disaster, followed by something you can't possibly recover from, and a miracle happens, and then the show comes off great. We had a lot of that going on before the show, but once the show started, it was just fantastic. Well, and everybody was enthusiastic.
Well, you know, Chuck, great. Back in the day, if you ran into the disaster category, you just turned it up.
Yeah, exactly. More bass. They won't. Nobody will notice.
Oh God, that brings back a thought I had once at SPAC. The Flock of Seagulls.
Oh boy.
Were performing, and they turned the bass up so much that people started getting nauseous. Believe it or not, it's a true story. I watch people actually have to leave the audience because and then one of the guys says, a very unassuming sort of British accent, I got a little too much bottom end there. You know, as you could probably tell, if Chuck and I start talking about music, we'll be here for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I uncovered something, and that's the reason you're here, is that you've taken a nom de plume of Rochmon. And you've created the Rochmon Record Club.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about why you created this club.
Well, I found myself in Europe. My wife, Karen Garner, is a college professor, and she got a Fulbright scholarship to teach in Europe for a semester, and I went with her. I retired from my day job, and I sold it's actually my joke about how do you get a drummer to move out of the house, sell everything, and move to Europe. And that's how Matteo left. But we were over there, and I had some things to do, but I really didn't have anything that was really occupying my mind on a full-time basis. And I just said, you know, I love records. I love music. I've loved it my whole life. I love talking about trivia. I love listening. I love discovering new things. And I just said, I'm going to do a podcast. Why not? So I started doing a podcast, and I downloaded about 165 pages of material on the first album that I was going to do, which is what we'll talk about. And I had to distill that down into about 12 pages a copy. And I did. And then I started taking the music and working it into the podcast and doing some of that editing and production stuff that's sort of fun to do, you know, when you're discovering your ways around it. And I've done recording and engineering and producing for a long time, so it wasn't that foreign to me. And it was, but I've never done myself, you know, I never had to do myself. So it was really a lot of fun, and I was able to piece together this hour-long podcast that actually was fun to listen to, and I discovered things that I didn't know.
I want to just add something to this. It isn't just any album. Chuck has, over the course of doing this for the last couple of years, right, Chuck?
Yes.
Has taken what he considers to be the seminal album in an artist's career. And that could vary a bit. If you go back to the Beatles, it's usually Rubber Soul or Revolver, right? You know, my God, Hall & Oates, it's Silver, probably. You know, there are a bunch of different albums, but they really do stand out. And creating a whole story around that album that includes background information on the artist at the time,
Yes.
what the recording sessions were like, what the musicians were like, what the interaction was like. I mean, this is really great stuff.
And
I gotta tell you.
the beauty of it for me is I have the ability to look backwards at it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's a year after Bowie, The Young Americans is the album we're going to do this week.
I bet.
It's not like it's a year after and you get to look back at it a year later. We get to look back at it 40 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those songs mean something different because we know more about Bowie. We know more about the people that were involved in it. We have more information because the internet is just such a crazy resource.
Well, you know, the other thing there too, Chuck, is, you know, you get to see it in perspective of history, which I think is really important, right?
Yeah.
And these do take on a life of their own. A lot of times with artists as important as a Bowie or the Beatles or the Stones or Queen, Hall & Oates, you know, they had something on their mind at that time. In some ways, they were prophets.
Yeah, they're
You know
prescient.
what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. Fame. Take the song
right.
Fame for one.
That's right.
I mean, that meant something in 1975. It really means something in 2016.
Yeah.
The idea that just being famous is enough.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
really, and it was almost, and I get into this a bit, it was almost Bowie's take on America.
Yes,
like
right.
that's why the Young Americans idea. It was like fame was so, he could see it being so important to people.
That's right.
And there's John Lennon.
That's right.
Who co-wrote the song with him,
right.
singing vocals, background vocals
right.
with him, and together they're having this critique of America that really didn't come into focus until now.
And,
it's just amazing.
And of course, if you look at Bowie's career, he was sort of fascinated with that too.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, "I Am an American" is an absolutely incredible song.
Yes.
Hey, so look, it's happening Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 18th. Get there about 6:30, 7 o'clock. The presentation is like 2 hours. It's going to be a multimedia mix of all kinds of things. A lot of conversation, a lot of feedback with the audience. It's the Rochmon Record Club, hosted by yours truly, Chuck Vosganian.
Thank you, Jesse.
And his nom de plume, Rochmon.
Rochmon,
And
yes.
it's the first of many to come with all kinds of great artists and albums. Very cool, Chuck.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Seriously.
I appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.